Welcome to this vlog from Kebun Kebun Bangsar community garden, and this one I have entitled From Villain to Role Model. Here I'm with the villain, who is now a role model, and the project has become a role model for community gardening. So it's really quite a remarkable turnaround and a remarkable story. So Seksan is one of the founders of this community garden project here in Bangsar. And I think not a lot of people know that the most read book about Malaysia actually recommends people to visit this very place. And I'm not even sure you knew it until I told you. So this is a Lonely Planet Malaysia, and this is the most read book about Malaysia actually. And actually this little text box here specifically mentions Bangsar Community Gardens and Kebun Kebun Bangsar. So that's quite an endorsement of this place. But despite of this really nice community garden, and I've been coming here since its beginning, since I work here in Bangsar as well, and really enjoy coming here. Despite this little paradise on earth, it has been on the verge of being closed down. You've gotten 2 red notices from the authority asking you to vacate this premises immediately. And if you didn't do so, you could get fined up to 500,000 ringgit and up to 5 years jail. So we were all quite worried and what would happen. And also it would be a really sad thing if this wonderful place had to close down. So we were happy to see in the middle of June of this year, 2022, that you had a meeting with the city council, and Kebun Kebun Bangsar was effectively given status as a role model community garden, and you got your license back to operate. You were allowed to keep all the animals in the park, and you were included back as a partner of the local agenda 2021 of Kuala Lumpur. So this is great, and just to give a little bit of background story to this park, it started in 2016. You had a vision, you did reach out, sort of public engagement.
It actually started in 2013.
Oh wow, okay.
But it took about 4 years or 3 years for us to untangle all the bureaucracies.
It's almost a 10-year anniversary. Okay. Yeah, I only learned about it in 2016, and I took part in one of those public engagements and was quite taken aback by the vision for what this piece of barren land could be. It's sort of abandoned piece of land under the high tension wires of the power utility, TNB. And you had the 10 core principles of inclusion and environmental sensitivity and civic consciousness and so on. And also, of course, the educational value for children. So all very good principles. So with that little bit extended intro, I want to get into this interesting villain versus role model scenario. I mean, there has been some controversy with this project. From few neighbours have been unhappy, maybe a little bit not in my backyard. Can you explain sort of in a nutshell, what this was about?
I think that the objections to us starting an urban farm for the community started even before we started. That was in 2016. In fact, some neighbours think that they do not want something like this in their neighbourhood, and there's a lot of reasons given for it. I can give you some: congestion, car parking, outsiders coming into the neighbourhood, security, privacy, landslides, gentrifications, etc., etc. So I think a lot of our people nowadays is actually a lot of them are driven by fear. So when they feel that there is something new coming into their neighbourhood, prefer not to have it because of fear. So it's one thing that we really wanted to change, because I think we should try to train our minds to be a bit more positive, to look at positive rather than negative. So in 2016, when we started the engagement that you were involved with, it involves a lot of people. It involves NGOs, it involves the government authority, government departments, involve our funders, involve a lot of children, brought all those people together in one town hall meetings, the negativity becomes more than the positive ideas. And that becomes very problematic. And then in one particular engagement with the resident association, the DBKL decided that they will not go ahead with this project with us because they think that it's too controversial. Because the neighbours doesn't like it, they shouldn't go ahead with it. So we shelved the project in 2016, in probably September. We were actually supposed to start on, we were given 3 plots of land.
Yes.
Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Underneath the transmission line of TNB. It's a 40-meter reserve and it runs continuously actually throughout Kuala Lumpur. So when the objection came, they put a stop to us. We took a break. My funders left. The children left because their parents didn't want them to get into all these controversies. And I took a break.
Yeah.
We took a break. But 1 year later, we decided maybe we will try another parcel, which is parcel 2, and try the engagement again with our neighbours. And that round of engagement, we managed to get the urban farm approved. So we started in 2017, 1 year later.
And that's the plot we're sitting at now.
Yes.
Which I think is a great plot because it has a big sort of flat piece in the beginning. Yeah. So when you restarted this, did some of the residents have the same negative sentiments, or had they also digested the idea and were more positive the second time around?
We have an engagement with them. We put a letter into all their letterboxes. We invited them to a meeting at APW nearby. DBKL deputy mayor came along with me. We engaged. Again, the same issue came up, but I think the deputy mayor, Datuk Najib, was very assertive. So he told the people who attended the meeting, he said, "Hey guys, we are coming to engage you and telling you what we are trying to do, which is an urban farm for the community." He said, this land, people have the right to use it. So he said, in many cases in our DBKL, land like this are actually applied by used car, yards, car parking, nurseries. He said when those people come and apply, they would not consult you. They will apply, if they get the approval, they will start work. So please consider. I think when he said that, the neighbours back off. The neighbours back off, and they're willing to give us a try.
Yeah.
They put a lot of condition on this, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have to fence up security at both ends to make sure that their security are secured at night. We only operate certain hours, things like that, etc., etc.
Yeah. And I remember you told me the other day that actually, in a bit stark contrast to all these fears, you told me one of the houses was for sale here in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And as part of their sales material, they put a lot of photos from this park because it improves or increases the attractiveness and the price of the properties. So
we get a lot of comments like this. A lot of people say, "Oh, how I wish I were your neighbor." People come and visit the place.
Yes. So, yeah. But that was difficult to convince people of that back then. Sounds like.
Yes, it's easy to convince people by a proof of concept. An idea is very hard. I think the problem is a lot of people renegade on ideas. They overpromise, especially developers.
So what you're saying is also now that you have a proof of concept, because I believe you want to make more kebuns, right? So it should be easier going forward.
The idea behind this kebun is not a physical kebun. The idea behind this kebun is a movement where citizens try to self-help themselves. Because at the moment, I think there is a food crisis, but also in Kuala Lumpur and a lot of other cities in Malaysia, there is a lot of congestion. People do not have enough open space to recreate or to do whatever. We are struggling to achieve the basic minimum for open space per capita. for Kuala Lumpur.
Yep.
So I think what we are trying to do is also a national service that we can help to turn wasteland, unused land, underutilized land into very productive, usable space.
Yeah. The development plan for Kuala Lumpur itself also has a target of improving or increasing these kind of green spaces.
So in this particular kebun, we are demonstrating an idea underneath a transmission reserve. So the main use is of course energy transmission. Of course, we are the secondary use underneath it to do all this urban recreation. We also have another kebun, which is about 5 minutes away from here, called Kebun Kebun Kerinci. That one we are demonstrating along the river reserve, which is another piece of a lot of land along the river reserve that is underutilized. Yeah, so we want to demonstrate that kind of land use to urban population because we are now in almost a crisis situation with climate crisis, food crisis. We have to be a bit more creative in land use in urban areas.
So I just want to touch a bit more on the controversy. As I understand, the main controversy has been the fact that you have animals here. Can you talk a little bit about that and also why these animals are so important?
Yeah. So Kebun Kebun Bangsar is a work in progress. We don't even know where it's going. So when we first started, there was no intention to have animals. It was supposed to be an urban farm. We were growing vegetables. The vegetables are grown by the community and they're given out to the poor. So there's that kind of, it's supposed to be bringing community together. But in the process of the farm running for the last 5 years, volunteers have been donating animals to the farm. First of all, chickens, some ducks, some goose, and finally 2 cows. Yeah. And when the animals came, we just adopt them because we have a very big piece of land. Our area here is 6 acres, so there is a lot of place that they can actually find a home for themselves. But then when the animals came, we find that they are so useful because they are actually in our permaculture practice, we don't use pesticides. There's a lot of grasshoppers, snails, caterpillars. So we have a lot of pest problem. But when some of these animals came, the problem became reduced. The chicken were eating the grasshoppers, the caterpillars and everything else. And the other problem we have when we first come in is mowing grass, because 6 acres of grass on very steep hill takes a lot of energy, both in terms of human energy, the grass cutter, and also petrol. We spend a lot of money buying petrol, cutting grass. But when the cows came, they were natural grass cutter. So we find that we are a lot safer. We don't need to go and cut grass on steep slopes. So the animal become very essential for our operation. Now the other thing also is, as the animals came in, a lot of children also came together with it, because a lot of these children have not seen goats or cows or even chicken in their life. So and this is so central to the city. In the city, they don't need to drive up to rural areas to see it. They come to see the animals, and not only children, special children, especially the mentally challenged, autistic children. They become very attached to the animals here, and the animals become an important part of our program here, in education, in therapy, everything else. So when we were asked to remove the animals, of course we have to put up a resistance to argue not only for ourselves as a farm, but for the children that we represent, the children that come. We've got thousands of children that comes to Kebun Kebun Bangsar every month. So our representation of the community needs to be very broad-based. It's not only to cater for complaints, but also for people who want things like this in the city.
Yeah. To me, at least, one of the unique things about this place that you have all these animals running around, and I can see it. Kids love it.
Yes.
I also love it. So I believe that the few neighbours who were against these animals, they were digging out law, sort of an old law, and trying to argue that this law, which is maybe not exactly meant for what we are doing here, should be applied. Can you talk a little bit to this, because you're also sort of facing these kind of outdated laws.
That particular law, that specific law, is called the Undang-Undang Kecil, the small laws, the bylaws of Kuala Lumpur. And it's on cows and cattle, specifically. Just on cows and cattle, that in the city, we are not allowed to have these animals. And this Undang-Undang Kecil was enacted, I think, in the 60s or early 70s. So it is about at least 50 years ago. Today, at that time, there was obviously very simple land use. 50, 60 years ago, can you imagine? Commercial, residential, public, or whatever. But now, land use is getting more and more sophisticated in the city. We have things like urban farming and other things that is coming into the city. So what we are saying is that law needs to be looked at. In fact, we're also looking at other very progressive cities like Amsterdam, Singapore, Copenhagen, and they are talking about biophilia, bringing nature back into the city. We are very interested in progressive ideas like that. So it's very important that our law allows for things like this. Yeah? So if you think about it, we have to look at our law to make it progressive. So that's, I think, the thing that we are trying to convince, we are trying to disrupt, so that laws can come in a lot quicker. I think both DBKL as well as our local representative in government, our MPs, they are all acknowledging, our lawmakers are acknowledging this law needs to be looked at because it's 50 years already.
Yeah, and I could imagine it's quite a long process to change these laws. I mean, so how optimistic are you that this is can be changed, and also that you can almost change the procedures for future, so the laws become a bit more adaptable to the realities on the ground?
Yes. I think the first thing we need to do is we also need to compromise. So for our part, what we did was when we first started, people were just donating so many animals to us, about 50 or 60 animals on site here in the Kebun. We have pulled back. We have brought the numbers back down almost to 25%. So we have removed about 75% of the animals in the farm as a compromise to the neighbours who are complaining. 2 years ago, when we got the first raid notice, our proactive action was to try to get the Ministry of Housing to try to enact a urban farm guidelines for the whole country, so that it makes it easier, because many people are interested in the idea of an urban farm, but they need to know what is the baseline. Yeah. So we told the Ministry of Housing that they need to provide a very clear guidelines for urban farming, people like us. And they should include at least a certain number of animals, so that permaculture and some of these mutually beneficial activities can happen between wildlife and farming. Unfortunately, that guideline still didn't get up to par to it. So right now we still have problems.
Right.
Still have problems.
Work in progress. Yeah, I hope we'll eventually get there. Just to finish off, you said this Kebun Kebun is a movement, and I'm curious to hear about your vision for the future. I mean, this is certainly a very successful Kebun Kebun community garden, but do you have even more ambitious visions for future Kebuns?
Yeah. I think going forward in the next 20 years, I would like to see at least another 100 Kebuns all around Malaysia, especially in big cities. I also hope that the local authorities, the people who are in government, who has a certain degree of power, will be more proactive in promoting it. So now that DBKL is back into our kind of collaboration, become our partners, every Kebun should be different, because every community has got their different characteristics. This Kebun was started, run, financed by us, but I think in future Kebuns we should outsource work. So I would like to work with like DBKL or some other local authorities where we come in, we provide all the infrastructures, the roads, the service yards, the composting areas, the recycling areas, the water, the electricity, the drains and everything. And we just cut unused land up into parcels and then give it out to people. I know that there is a huge number of people who will want to farm if they are, especially in the low cost areas, in the PPR flats areas. They are natural farmers, but they are all fearful that if they start to do something later, whatever hard work that they put in will be demolished by the authority. We have to reverse that. We got to encourage them out from that small flats that they live up in a high rise, bring them down into the farm, give them lots of resources that we as a state have land, money, finance, everything. And we kind of become like enablers to empower all these people to farm in the cities and at least grow more healthy food for their family, things like that. Then I think Malaysia will be a better place.
I think so too. Thank you very much, Seksan. We look forward to the next 20 years. Plus.